Brady Bunch episode.
It is a
Here's the story of a lovely lady. I see you guys all in like a little grid here. So I first want to say welcome. I can see you. I don't know if you can see everybody else. Can you see everybody else in the gallery view?
Yep.
Great, great. Excellent. I just want to wait and make sure that we got everybody in here before I start, and let you know kind of what the flow of this masterclass is going to be all about. And hiya, Peyton. How you doing? I'm at the School of Rock Ridgefield, and I've been just for a couple of months, really, before this happened. You guys do things. I love performance-based learning. I think it's the best way to get the full music experience. You know, I've been teaching for about 18 years. This year will be my 18th year teaching. And before that, you know, I certainly had a lot of music education starting at age 14. And, you know, I never dreamed that this would be the way that we are rehearsing and learning together now online, virtually. It's definitely, it's different, but I guess we all got to get used to the different things, doing things a little bit differently. So Adam, have we got everybody on here? You said 9 people?
Yep, I'm admitting one more, and
Okay.
you are free to get started whenever you'd like.
Awesome. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're ready to go. So
Yeah,
this is,
Oh, sorry, I was just going to tell everybody that we're just going to keep everyone muted during this, and you guys can ask your questions via the chat function. But I think what we planned on was getting to all the questions at the end of the class. Okay.
Great. So yeah, so if you know something comes into your head, just put it in the chat, and then I'll look at it. You know, towards the end of the, you know, I'll save the last 15 minutes to answer the questions that you guys write in the chat. Okay. So this is my very first time doing a master class online. So I have some notes here so that I could keep myself on the track. And first off, I just wanted to let you know that these are some of the topics that I'm going to hit in this lesson. I'm going to start off first by telling you a little bit about myself and my experience in music education when I was young, and when I started playing in rock bands. I was 14, and then I'm going to get in a little bit of my influences. Then talking about strictly vocal things for a few minutes. So we're going to be I want you to check out some warm-ups that I do. That's part of my lessons. I always do them in the very beginning, the first 5-10 minutes of class. We do these vocal eases, and I'm going to show you shortly, you know, just a short truncated version of what we do. And then I talk a lot about song choice, choosing what songs you're going to work on. Now, I know in the School of Rock repertoire, you guys don't really get to choose your own songs, but there's usually time in my lessons to work on stuff that students choose. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then audition preparation. That's something I want to talk about, give you an opportunity to think about, you know, your future as a singer and some things that you might want to get good at so that you can audition for different shows. And there's a lot of stuff that obviously happens on television that you can make home videos and send in your audition video to like, you know, The Voice and X Factor and different talent shows like that. And then I'm going to talk about rehearsal preparation. And I know that some of you are already, you know, pretty involved with rehearsals, and you work with different bands, which is like the best thing about School of Rock and why I really love to teach with this program. Writing sessions, this is something that, you know, kind of comes after you've been working for maybe a couple, 3 years in with live bands and stuff. But I want to talk a little bit about that, how I approach songwriting with my band, and recording sessions. It's a different kind of singing when you're in the studio than it is on stage or in a room full of musicians playing, because when you're recording, everybody's in separate areas and you got headphones on. So it's a different type of singing. Let me talk about that as well. I'm going to talk about how to prepare for your show day and what to do day of show, like all the things that I go through when I'm packing my car, when I'm getting ready to leave to go to the venue, and then what I do when I get to the venue, what I do during sound check, what I do, what's going through my head when I'm on stage, and when I'm performing for people. Now, all the rehearsal's over, you're on stage, you're in front of people, and this is where you get your opportunity to kind of be the interface between the band and the audience. So you're the one that's really engaging with the crowd. And I'm going to talk a lot about that because I have a lot of experience with that, being on the road for about 10 years straight. Sometimes we'd be on the road for 5 weeks at a time. I'd be away from home. And I've played all over the country in 3 different bands. And so I've had a lot of experience doing that, playing to audiences in little nightclubs and in big festival stages and in large amphitheaters. So all kinds of different styles of singing, different styles of performing, and a lot of things to think about. You know, when you're part of something like the School of Rock, you get opportunities to do a lot of performing. So it's great. Anyway, first off, short little bit about me. You know, I started singing in high school band. They used to have a show every spring at my high school here in Fairfield called the Spring Jam, and everybody who was involved in any kind of music outside of school got a chance to audition for this, and then the following week we would all get to perform after they chose from all the different bands would get up, and sometimes it would just be like duos or singer songwriters, and they'd get up and they do their audition piece, and everybody got to audition with like a song or two. So by the time that week went by, we had an opportunity to do a couple of technical rehearsals where we got to sing on stage with the house PA in our school auditorium, and that was really different from being in a little tiny basement with the speakers on top of everybody and the drums like right, the cymbals getting crashed in my face all the time, to going and being on a stage where everyone's all spread out. It really was a big difference. I noticed right off the bat that that it really matters who's running your sound and who is putting your vocals in the monitor, because if you can't hear what's going on, what's coming out of your mouth, if you can't hear that, then you're really going to be sort of buried and probably out of tune. So it was very important, those technical rehearsals, to learn how to do this. And it was my first time doing it. I was 14, and now people don't really do a lot of practice in those situations, so it was like you had to learn on the fly. And it was so different from any other kind of singing I had ever done before, because I was in chorus. I was in musical theater from the time I was very little. I had family who were directors and choreographers for summer theaters. Some were on Broadway. I was never on Broadway, but my aunt and uncle were. And I learned a lot from them about performance. And a lot of the shows that we would do, I had the opportunity to sing some solo parts, and that was cool because I got then some leading parts in my high school musicals. And that kind of singing was just completely different than what we learn at School of Rock, with electronic instruments that are have to be mixed, and they have to be equalized. What equalizing is, where you help get more bass or maybe high end, so that your voice has more tone to it, has better color, better sound to it. And that was a huge learning experience that I only got once a year with the Spring Jam, because the rest of the year it was really like there was nowhere for kids to play. There was no, you couldn't play out in clubs and stuff. And, we got to play like in other people's basements or maybe at a backyard party or something like that. So I got a job working at Friendly's, and I saved up all my money and I bought a PA, because up until the point that I bought the PA and the microphone, I was singing through like a guitar amp, which sounded horrible and had terrible EQ. And I couldn't get the volume up really loud enough to where you could hear me over the drums and the bass. And, it was stressful. So when I got the money together to buy my own PA set, I got these, the speakers inside of my cabinets were a 15-inch speaker on the bottom and a 10-inch speaker in the middle. And on the top, they had what they call the horn, and so when you see main speakers, they're called the mains, that's what you normally see. It's like a tower, and it's usually three speakers like that. And I had, one on each side, and I learned how to use the equalizer so that I could get some more low end in my voice, because when I was younger, my voice was kind of high and squeaky, and I didn't like it very much. And we're singing all these songs that were kind of made famous by men in rock bands, so I wanted to have a little more beefy sound. So I would bring up the mids and the lows in the EQ, and I learning how to do that was a huge help. And then I realized I had to point the speakers away from me, or else it would just feedback and it was just horrible. And I'd have to turn the volume down so low that I wouldn't be cutting over the band anymore. So once I figured out that, we had to turn the speakers away from me, then I realized, wow, I can really crank now, and everybody could hear me really good. The only problem was I didn't have a monitor at that point. So that was what was different about, getting out of the basement and then going and being on stage where you have monitors and the mains are facing out to the audience. And that helped a lot. Whenever we played places and I could really hear myself, it was like, wow. But meanwhile, I just had to learn how to sing really loud. I had to sing hard. And, up until the point I could hear myself, I really had to push. And that's when I learned a lot of good things about projecting. And then I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston when I was when I got out of high school. And it wasn't the first college I went to. I went to a school for musical theater first, thinking that that was the way to go. But honestly, it wasn't my first love. I didn't really love musical theater because I loved rock and I wanted to be a songwriter. And up until this point, we're mainly doing covers of songs that were like I went to high school in the 80s. We would do, 70s rock, 80s rock. And, that to me that was making me really happy. And that's what I really wanted to do. When I got to Berklee, though, I got to sing a lot of jazz, and I learned about the blues there, which was really a great thing because really rock and roll has its roots in the blues. And we also did a study of progressive rock, which is one of the performance shows that we have here at School of Rock. And that is like kind of a marriage of rock and classical music. And then of course funk, soul music, is kind of a mix of blues, R&B, and rock. And I really felt like those were my two worlds, that I really enjoyed progressive funk rock. And of all the music that I studied at Berklee, that was what I was kind of leaning towards, like wanting to do for myself and my life. And at the time, that was when there was a lot of sequencing, drum machines and synthesizers in music. And I was really not into it. I was really much more into the rock. I was into guitar oriented, soulful, psychedelic rock, kind of the stuff that, was coming out of that Woodstock soundtrack, that whole, time in music. That was the thing that I felt resonated the most with what I liked, And so in that, opportunity of getting to sing some of that music, I found some other like-minded musicians that put a band together called Tongue and Groove. And I used to go see them all the time. they played a lot of restaurants and nightclubs local to Fairfield and where I was growing up. And, you know, so we were playing these little kind of places that were just small. And yeah, they have like a little stage in the corner kind of thing. And that's where I really learned how to sing without losing my voice, because we were playing all up and down the coast, the southern coast of Connecticut up to Hartford. And then we also started playing down on Long Island and in New York City. So we were playing like 5 nights a week, traveling all over the place. And we had horns in the band, so we were doing a lot of soul, funk, R&B, Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown, and it was a big band. You know, it was like a 8-piece band, and you know, I really didn't think that they needed a singer, because their lead singer was fantastic and he was just a great singer. But he had also gone to Berkeley too, and he remembered me from there, and he invited me to sit in a couple times. And then after a while, they asked me to join the band, so I kind of joined as the backup singer, and we went all over the place. And then eventually he left the band and he moved out west, and then I became the lead singer of that band. And that's when I really made the jump from just being a student and loving music to being a professional. And I was actually getting paid 5 nights a week to lead a band and sing all over tri-state area. And that band was called Deep Banana Blackout. And at a certain point, I said, you know, this is really great, but we gotta write music. You know, this is what it was about for me. I wanted to write music, and I had all these kind of like songwriting influences that were, like I said, like a combination of rock, R&B, and soul. And so younger age, you know, when I first was my first bands, we were covering like a lot of Pat Benatar, Blondie, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Heart, Chrissie Hynde, The Pretenders, Janis Joplin. We were doing some Black Sabbath. We did some Ozzy Osbourne solo record stuff with Randy Rhoads. Rush was the first concert I ever went to in the Hartford Civic Auditorium. And then I also saw U2 about 4 months later, the rock band from Ireland. And I saw them a lot. I probably saw U2 like, maybe 10 times in like 4 or 5 years. And we also really, like I said, I was really into progressive rock, which was like Yes. You know, they had a lot of classical themes in their music, whereas like they had movements. They would play songs in odd meters, odd key signatures, and they had crazy harmonies, and it was really cool. I really loved Yes for that reason. But when it got down to it, I mean, like the really like this kind of good time party rock and roll, like Van Halen and Bad Company, I really loved that stuff too. And then as I got older and I was like more college age, I was like into, for singers, I was really into Chaka Khan and Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, and Lynn Collins, who is backup singer for James Brown in the late 70s. And I just, you know, I really gravitated to those singers for more like my style, what I ended up doing with Deep Banana Blackout. And then, you know, of course, because we had horns in the band, we did a lot of P-Funk, Kool and the Gang, Tower of Power. And I also love the blues. Like I love Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King and Ray Charles. And, you know, those were kind of that was the basics for me. And also at that time, I had a lot of friends who were really into the Grateful Dead. So I went to a lot of Dead shows, and they were all really very influenced by the blues. At least Jerry Garcia really was. You know, he was his Jerry Garcia band did primarily blues. You know, they were a blues band, whereas the Grateful Dead did more like Americana, like, you know, bluegrass kind of, all different kinds of folk music from the 70s and late 60s. And that was kind of the blend of influences that I came up with, and kind of influenced the kind of songwriting and stuff that I wanted to do. So with my band Deep Banana Blackout, we started to actually gain a huge following, and we had original music that we would also play alongside of, like, you know, Stevie Wonder and P-Funk and Kool and the Gang and James Brown tunes of Tower of Power. We'd play all those songs, and in between we would put our songs that we wrote, and we were kind of using some of those bands that I just mentioned as kind of like, and Sly and the Family Stone, I didn't mention them. They were a huge influence on the way we as a band came up with our music, and the horns would come up with their part, and the guitar player would, you know, write a lot of songs, and we would just all get in the room together and we would just jam. We would try different things out, and it was a fantastic band. We made a couple of albums together, and I was in that band for 5 years, and we toured the whole country, and we got to open up for P-Funk and Medeski, Martin and Wood, and we played at some in the parking lot at the Fish shows, and you know, we were kind of hippies, just kind of got in the van and traveled all over the country and played our music everywhere. And it was a tremendous experience doing that. And because of our involvement with like the Allman Brothers and Government Mule, we got to play on some really, really great festival stages at a point in our lives where we were, you know, pretty much unknown as far as like a band. Like, we were young. We didn't have a lot of, you know, we didn't have records on the radio or anything, or videos out on MTV. And we got opportunities to play with these guys and open up for them that were just amazing, because they were cool people and they were into the, you know, this young band that was playing all this kind of like older music with horns in it. So they gave us a chance, and they liked us, and they liked, you know, letting us open up for them. And I became friendly with the keyboard player from P-Funk. His name is Bernie Worrell, and he asked me to join his band. So basically I was on tour for 2 years with him. And because he's a big name in rock and roll, he's like a 2-time Hall of Famer. He was also in the Talking Heads, and he wrote that song Burning Down the House. He was a big star. So we got to play some really incredible places, and I was, you know, basically the lead singer in his band. And again, got to tour the whole country for about 2 years with his band. And then I started another project, another band called the Bomb Squad around that time, with some friends of mine who were also from Fairfield that I had actually grown up with, and some guys that I had met at Berkeley when I was in Boston, horn players. And again, it was very much the same instrumentation as Deep Banana Blackout. So we were very heavily Stevie Wonder, you know, Tower of Power influenced, but we were writing our own music, and we recorded 2 albums with that band. And we actually won an American Music Award in 2003. And we got to perform after Metallica at the AMAs in 2003, which was really exciting for me. I got to go to Hollywood for the first time, and got to, you know, be on these big stages with all these big stars, and, you know, like Pink and Kid Rock were playing the same night that we were there, and you know, we got to go on after Metallica. It was crazy. Good times. And I never sang on a stage like that before. Like, I remember going into the tech rehearsal. You know, this is live television, so it was quite a long tech rehearsal, and there was a lot of you know, levels to get. You had to be really patient, you know, standing on stage waiting for everybody to get their sounds and get the EQ and get the feed ready. And it was a long day, a really long day of doing that. But then, you know, the day of the show came, and everything just like went like clockwork. But you know what? We were one of the only bands that didn't actually lip sync. Of course, like Pink didn't lip sync, Kid Rock didn't lip sync, and neither did Metallica. But just about every other band that was there was lip syncing. So when it came time for the show to start, I had a you know, a handheld mic, and the first like 2 seconds of our song, they didn't have my mic on. It was so frustrating. It's like, first time on national television ever, and my mic wasn't on for 2 seconds, and then somebody figured it out. Oh, turn the mic on. That was crazy, because, you know, they were used to everybody getting up there and lip syncing. Anyway, but so that was crazy and a good time. And I thought at that point, you know, I started having a family. I had a 1-year-old daughter at home, and I thought, you know, maybe this is it, you know. And then I when she was about 3 years old, you know, I had her baby brother, and I thought, you know, at this point, I'm kind of like, I did everything I wanted to do with music, so I started to think about retiring from music, and I started teaching at that point. But about 2 months after I decided to quit, I got a call from Mickey Hart, who's the drummer of the Grateful Dead. And apparently he and the other drummer in the Grateful Dead, Bill Kreutzmann, they had this band called the Rhythm Devils. And they had the bass player from Fish, Mike Gordon, and a really great protege of Jerry Garcia named Steve Kemach in their band. And they were about to go on a 30-day tour when this woman that they had planned on doing the tour with bailed out. And it was like happening in like 4 or 5 days. And they needed someone to fill in for her. And I was like, don't think I could like turn this down. This was like pretty much an amazing gift to get to an opportunity like that. So of course, you know, these guys were just, they treated me like family. You know, I was kind of a young newbie in the whole situation, and they were big stars, and they treated me so great. And I had a lot of music to learn fast. We had, you know, 8-hour rehearsals the first 4 days you know, before we went out on the road, and I had like 50 songs to learn, and it was deep. But I learned a lot about, you know, how to create a lyric book. You know, this is back in the days before like iPads and stuff like that. So I learned how to create a binder with plastic sheets in it. I would print out my lyrics. I would, you know, make the font bigger, and I would make these books because, you know, there was so much material that I had to learn in a very short period of time. I couldn't just memorize everything. It was just too hard. So I had to have a book on stage with a music stand. The first time in my life I approached things like that, because up until this point, I was just memorizing everything. And there were songs that I had written, so it was easy to memorize those. But this was really the first time I was performing on stage with a book like this thick, a binder, 3-ring binder with all my songs in it. So I learned how to put, you know, a lyric book together. Every night it was a different order. The set list would always change, and it'd be a different order of so I'd have to take the pages out and put them in order, so that when I got on stage, I just focused on, oh, what's the next song? Flip the page. I didn't have to like search through, and, you know, because that kind of like breaks the focus of what you're doing. If you're on stage like messing around, like trying to get your lyrics up, or if you're holding your phone or whatever, it kind of blows the whole image, you know. So I really just wanted everything to be boom, ready to go. And I would keep my music stand very low, so people in the audience could see me. I made sure there was a good line of sight, so the music stand wasn't covering my face. You know, there's a lot of stuff you got to think about when you're on stage like that from a performance aspect of it. So I learned a lot of stuff with them. We also recorded a little bit. We did, you know, live DVD recordings with that group, and it was amazing. You know, we did like a 5-camera shoot at the Chicago Theater. That is, it's amazing. It was like a total multimedia thing. You know, they had projection screens behind us, and sometimes it would be like all like kaleidoscope light show type of stuff, and other times it would be us, you know, just giant versions of us on the jumbotrons, you know. And, you know, and the camera angles were always changing, and, you know, it was multimedia performance. So, you know, you had to always be aware every moment of what you were doing, and focusing on the other players. You know, there's a lot of soloing going on. And when you're on stage and somebody's soloing, if you just stand there like you're waiting for a bus, it kind of blows the whole performance vibe of the show, you know. So that's when I started to really focus on, you know, what does this look like, you know, when I'm on stage? What, you know, I always was very aware that, you know, wherever I would put my focus, you know, it would always be on whoever was soloing. And, you know, I'm going to go through a little bit of that later. But anyway, so that's kind of like brings me to this next part of what I'm talking about here, is that after I, you know, did a couple of years with those guys on the road, it just really got to be too much because my kids were little, and I just had to focus more on teaching. So then I got into developing this skill of teaching, which is a totally different thing. It's different than being a performer. It's different than being a songwriter and getting in the recording studio every day. It's really, I think, about connecting with the student and what music that they like, and helping them get used to the way their voice resonates in their body and how making different tones feel. So when I was growing up, I only had a few vocal lessons before I was in college. And then when I was in college, I had two teachers that were opera singers, and it was like their thing was really classical. But I got a lot of good technical training from them, even though I couldn't really relate to like the songs they wanted me to learn, because back in those days we didn't have YouTube and we didn't have the ability to karaoke and stuff like that. So whatever songs they knew how to play on the piano, those were the songs that I would have to work on, because that was their way of teaching. So when I became a teacher myself, I really wanted to connect with the student on what they really liked. By the time I was an adult, I'm teaching.
What time?
7:30.
Oh, because everything's ready.
Sorry about that. This is the fun of teaching from home, Anyway, so I had a teacher when I started singing professionally. I had a vocal teacher that I just went to for a few lessons, but she gave me some really invaluable techniques. And I'm going to do a couple of them for you right now to help me to never lose my voice, so that I could sing 5 nights a week and not lose my voice. And she always talked about things like, you don't want to talk too much over music in a loud place, because that really strains your vocal cords, because the kind of breathing that you do when you're talking is not like the breathing that you do when you're singing. So singing is all about getting like good breath, and it's really important to always fill up and have as much air as you can get in your lungs to create your underneath your lungs is where your diaphragm muscle is. That's got to be completely stretched out so that your diaphragm acts almost like a drum head. And then the sound will literally bounce off of your diaphragm muscle up into your face. And then you won't have to you're not singing with your throat. You're not like you do when you're talking. Your vocal cords are kind of like shoestrings. And when you talk, they kind of like do this. They bounce off of each other like that. Now, when you sing and you get a good breath, your vocal cords are rubbing together like this, like almost like a bow going across a violin string. And that is where the sound is being created, but where you feel it, it's not here. If you're feeling it here, that means that you've got some tension in your throat, and you're trying to use your throat to sing, and you're not going to be able to hit the high notes that you want. Your voice isn't going to be free and you're going to lose it. That's how, like, you ever hear about people like that lose their voice, or they get nodes on their vocal cords? That's because they're kind of almost like screaming and not really singing. And they're talking maybe over loud music a lot, or maybe they're smokers and they have really dehydrated vocal cords. Because what happens is when those vocal cords are rubbing together night after night after night, or they're banging on each other like that, blisters will develop. So you have to be hydrated. Smoking is really a terrible thing to do for your vocal cords. It dries them out really bad. And so is drinking. Drinking any kind of drugs is going to dry you out. It's going to make you not be able to make a good sound with your vocal cords. And, there's plenty of people that, play in bars, and, especially when I was kind of growing up, that people were smoking a lot more. It was, luckily people have figured it out that, smoking is horrible for you. But I used to have to play and sing in places that were filled with smoke, and it really would affect my vocal cords. And the only thing you can really do in that case, if you're in an environment like that where it's like real dusty, like you're at a festival or whatever, or it's smoky and people are smoking in your face and you're getting smoke in your throat, or sometimes when they do those light shows and they do the dry smoke and they blow the smoke out so that the lights will look beautiful, and that happens to me a lot too. Like, I get dried out from that as well. You just have to always have a big bottle of water on stage, room temperature, so you can keep hydrate those vocal cords. Best thing for you. So anyway, here are some of the vocal exercises that I do in my class, just really quick. I always start off with humming. So, and I do 2 octaves from the G below middle C up to the G, the high G above the second C. So that's, you know, that's kind of my range that I usually am in. Sometimes with some of the guys, I have them go all the way down to the D below middle C. And then they don't go up quite as high. They just go to the D above middle C instead of going all the way up to the G. But some guys can actually sing pretty high, and some girls can sing pretty low too. It just depends on the student. But anyways, we always start with humming no matter what. And the scale is just and you're really supposed to be feeling everything here. Everything here. This is what they call the beak in singing. This is your beak. Chirp, chirp. And this is the mask. So, and this of course is your chest. And the low notes resonate here, and the mid-range, the middle notes kind of are in the beak in this area. And then in the mask is where you're going to feel all the high notes, even up into here. So sometimes when we're doing the scales, in my class, I'll be pointing to places on my face where I want you to feel it. Because most importantly, I don't want you to feel anything here. I want your throat to be completely relaxed so that you can make a good quality tone there, so that your vocal cords are vibrating without any obstruction. And sometimes when you're warming up, especially when you're doing the humming, you can feel like some mucus or like goo from, like, if you had like ice cream, or if you're, yogurt or whatever, something with dairy can really make you very congested, and that you definitely want to clear out. So when you get to a certain point with the warm-ups, then you really feel like you're, oh yeah, my breath is getting big, I'm supporting, and I can feel everything up in my face. I'm not feeling anything in my throat anymore. So then we start doing the next set of exercises, which is me, me, me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. And we want this to kind of sound, very nasal, because what we're doing is we're not trying to sound, like performance ready. We're just warming up the face. We're trying to, use these different these areas that resonate, in here, because this is where you really want to work with the sound. This is where you want to project from, because your breath is really the place where it's like it's pumping the sound up into your face. So once it comes up here, this is where you color it. This is where you get your consonants and your vowels to really be, crisp up your sound. And because nobody really can understand lyrics if you have like a mush mouth, So that's why we use all these different vowels and consonants in the warm up to kind of get your mouth and your lips and your teeth and your tongue all involved with the singing process, because that's going to make your lyrics really clear and understandable. Especially when people are hearing songs that they know the lyrics to, they want to hear it. They don't want to hear mush mouth. And so we talked a little bit about choosing songs before, but you think about what you have to do is put in your mind, what is this for? Is this for an audition, or is this something that I'm going to be preparing my for school choir, or is it like a stage show, or am I trying to get into a band? So with that in mind, then you choose what songs you're going to work on in class, after we do the warm-ups. And whenever I always, at first I always say, hey, let's print up the lyrics if it's a new song, and you want to make the font like 16 is usually the font that you want to get when you print it out, and then take a pencil and make little breath marks, check marks where you're going to breathe, because number one thing you want to be thinking about when you're learning your lyrics is, where am I going to take a breath? And that will help you, learn the melody if it's a new song. And it's a lot easier nowadays to find, karaoke and stuff like that on YouTube, so that you're able to, pretty much pick any song that you want, You know, there's pretty much karaoke for everything now. So, and you can get the tracks to anything. So we do a lot of that in our lessons, you know. That way the student is totally free to do any song they want. They don't have to worry about me accompanying them on piano, because, you know, that opens up a wider field of interest for people. So as a band leader, you're also going to do quite a bit of, you know, preparation, especially when, you know, you're preparing something like, let's say, for a School of Rock event. I know a lot of people have been using their phones and their iPads and stuff like that. And the best thing you can do about that is to set up a music stand it's not right in front of your face. And, you know, it's best to really memorize stuff. So sometimes, especially in the beginning when you're younger and this isn't like, you know, it's kind of a new thing for you, you just want that sheet music there, or your chart there of your lyrics, just as a safety backup, just in case you panic and you don't remember the next verse. You can glance down and it's right there. That's what you want, but you don't want to be like glued to the page, you know, while you're singing, because then you won't be thinking about your practice, your performance rather. The time for doing this is in rehearsal. So now I'm going to talk about rehearsal. So usually before a rehearsal, everybody gets the set list of what's going to be gone over in the rehearsal. That just kind of like streamlines, you know, what you need to get together for your goal for that night, how much material you're going to get through. You know, it's time to move on when everybody's like, okay, is that good? Is that good? Is that good? You comfortable? You comfortable? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, then we can move on. But you really got to let people talk. Like it's hard because everybody's playing, it's loud in rehearsal, and people, you got to, if somebody says, you know, holds up the peace sign, we got to stop here. You know, we got to fix this. This isn't right. If you need to tune up or whatever, let people talk. Really important. You should record all of your rehearsals. I do. There's apps that you can get on your phone that you can record, you know, anything. You know, I use my phone, I record everything. And then I send the recordings to the other players in the group, you know, and so they can listen back to it. As a singer, your job is really to listen. That's like 98% of what you do besides breathe. Besides breathing, listening is such a big part of being a great singer. And then mic technique. Okay, so live, sometimes you just got to eat the mic. You just got to get right on it. Different microphones, especially in the live, they are what you call unidirectional. That means that it's got a sweet spot, and one spot of the microphone's really hot, and you want to sing into that. The difference between that and like recording studio type singing is a lot of times they use these like tube mics, and they're like cylindrical, and they're called omnidirectional, and that means that you're just singing in the room and you've got the music in your headphones and you're just singing out like that. For me personally, I don't know, you have to kind of find your way with this. It helps me a lot to pop one ear out of the headphones so that I can hear the way my voice sounds in the room, and then I hear the instruments in the other headphone. That just helps me really a lot. That helps me a lot too with harmony, when you're trying to harmonize with other singers. If you're ever on stage and you can't really hear yourself and you want to be able to blend, I always do this thing where you just take your finger like this behind your ear and you kind of speak into your hand like this. You sing into your hand and you'll be able to hear yourself, and then with this ear, you'll hear the other voice that you're trying to harmonize with. So important for blending in harmony, and hearing yourself is crucial when you're a singer. So show day preparation. I'm getting to the point where I want to take questions here, so I don't want to go too much longer, but show day preparation. Now, if you set up your book or your iPad in order of the set of the show tunes, you know, how the order of the show is going to go, so that you just have to swipe your finger, or you just have to turn a page, you know, whether you're doing it with a 3-ring binder or an iPad. You want to have that all set up before show day. So you get on stage to do your sound check. First thing you're going to do is you're going to set up that, music stand with your charts on it, you know. Just this is just in case, because most of the time you're going to be pretty well memorized by the time if you rehearse enough with your band, you're going to pretty much have everything memorized. But just in case, you got it there. Now, sound check is really important, that the band, the drums start, the bass, the guitars, the keys, and you're last. You're the last thing, because they got to get their levels and everything's got to be there. And then they got to lay you on top of all that and make you the loudest thing, because you're not plugged into anything. You're not a tone that's getting generated from, you know, an electronic instrument. You got to be the loudest person on stage. That's just the way it is. And if you can't hear yourself, it's not going to work. But the other thing that's, I think, really crucial is that you have sight lines in the band. That you are able to, you know, if you're coming up to a part where you maybe got a cue, you know, maybe the guys are all got to come in together at one part, or you're about ready to end the song or go to the next section. Everybody, you got to get eye contact with everybody before it happens. Raise your hand. And then when it's time, you know, like I usually do it like a measure before the change. 1, 2, 3, 4, change. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, end. This kind of gives them the head up. Here we go, and end. Here we go, and change. And get people's, like, you know, connect with people, look them in the eyes. Then the last thing I want to say, and then I'm going to take some questions for the last 10 minutes, stage presence, okay? I play percussion on stage. I play tambourine, I play shekere, I play cabasa, I play hiro, you know, I play a lot of different Latin percussion instruments. And I dance a lot because my focus is on whoever's soloing. I'm always moving around. I'm putting on a show because, you know, I've been to a lot of shows where people just kind of stand there and it just, I don't know. The vibe is kind of weird. Like that. But that's just me. Everybody's got their own style, you know. Whatever you feel comfortable with, really. Some people like to just like really headbang and just like rock out like that. That's cool. You don't have to have, you know, choreography or anything. But it is very important, I think, to have eye contact with the audience as well. Kind of invite them into your world and interface between the band and introduce the songs. And then after end of the show, maybe before the last song, introduce the players in the band. I think that's really important. So that's pretty much it. I'd like to open it up now for some questions. I know I said a lot of stuff in a short period of time, but you can, if anybody's got any questions or something they just want to make a comment, you know, you could do that too.
Yeah, any of your questions can be typed into the chat, so we can do them in order, or if you want to just wave your hand to get our attention via video, you're welcome to do that. I can unmute you if you don't want to type. So if you have any questions, just get our attention either way and we'll click unmute for you.
Ah, that's a good question. How to handle a mistake on
The question. Can you hear me? Is this working all right?
Yeah, we can hear
Give me
you.
a thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay, good. So, yeah.
I guess these are dead. They keep going off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Good. Good. Now I'm just on the regular mic on the iPad. So don't let it show. Don't look at somebody like if somebody in the band makes a mistake, don't look at them. If you make a mistake, don't, I know it's really hard, but don't go, oh God, don't say, can I start over? Just try to run alongside the horse and get back on. You know what I mean? Like, just try not to bust the momentum of what's going on. That's where having the lyrics in front of you comes in really handy, because you can just glance down and find your place without stopping and making a train wreck, you know? But if you come in at the wrong time, just kind of like, you know, stand back, get your bearings for a second, and then, okay, it's time to come in. Okay, come in there. It happens, you know. Sometimes when we do shows and we haven't had a lot of rehearsal, or if somebody makes a request and we haven't had a chance to like go over it, and I'm doing a song maybe off the top of my head that I haven't heard in a long time, and I make a mistake, I just try to smile and just pick up with it. And a lot of times, if it's a lyrical mistake and it's not obvious to everyone that you sang the first verse twice, or that you sang the third verse instead of the second verse, if it's not obvious, don't worry about it. And something like that is very minimal. If it's a mistake that you just feel is just so blaring and like obvious and really bad, the faster you can fix it and go on with the rest of the song, nobody will remember it. That's what I always try to tell myself, And also, if you ever feel like looking out into the audience is going to distract you, like if you have people out in the audience that either are like a brother or a sister or a friend that always makes you laugh, definitely don't look at them. What I do is I look at the back wall of where I am. If I know that, I really want to concentrate, but I want it to look like I'm looking at the audience, I look at the back wall. I look at the tops of people's heads, like over their heads. Don't look them like directly in the eye, but you're still kind of like looking at and engaging the audience. Does that answer your question? That's what I would do. I would just be like, because I've done it plenty of times. I've forgotten lyrics and messed them up or whatever, or sang in the wrong spot. But the quicker you can, cover it up and move on, people forget about it like that. You got it. So does anybody ever have any question about preparation for like auditions? Like, what do people want to hear, for an audition like that? Has anybody ever tried to audition for like a video audition for a TV show or anything? Because I've had some students who, wanted to get on a talent show. And I always say, most of them want like 2 minutes of your best song. So, most songs are longer than 2 minutes. So you want to maybe go in and just find that certain part of the song where there's like the high note. You know how like sometimes a song kind of takes a minute to get going, and the first like verse or two is kind of like low key? Just cut that part off and go right to the like chorus where it's like got the really exciting dramatic high note, or the big part that's really like, the money shot. That's what you want to focus on in auditions. And sometimes when I would go, I used to go into New York City and audition for, stage plays and, Broadway shows and stuff like that. They would always say, we want your best 16 bars. So basically I would take a song that I really liked, and I would find the highlight of it and chop it down to those 16 bars. And do that in my voice class with my voice teacher and make sure it made sense. And I would do that. So what was that question? It was up and then it went away.
Kara asked if you could share how you learn and study harmonies.
Oh, great. Yes. Okay. So now most harmonies are the root and the third and the fifth, and then sometimes, they're like, that would be a major chord harmony, Do, mi, so. That is, you want to like really learn your part, and then like, with the other person that you're harmonizing with, and you hear their part come in, so you want to always kind of here's your note, here's your note, here's your note, or you could go, here's your note, here's your note, here's your note, and try to find, like, doing interval singing with the piano is a really good way to work on harmony. I think there was another question. Yep. About Broadway shows.
Yeah, Tatiana had asked some tips for Broadway auditions or stage plays.
Okay, yeah. So, back in when I used to do that type of auditioning, I I would pick, 16 bars of a tune that usually they have an accompanist with it, that you're going to sing with, that's there. So you have to bring sheet music in. I don't know if they allow you to bring your own tracks in. Back when I used to, they really frowned on that. They didn't want you to bring tracks in. They wanted their piano player to play while you sang, because a lot of the time, they just wanted to see if they could work with you, like, if they like you and they hear, like, let's say you do your 16 bars of your song and you go in there with your sheet music with just those 16 bars ready to go, and they say to you, we'd like to hear if you can sing this song, and maybe like it's a song for the show. The person who's the accompanist playing the piano, they'll be there like trying to say, oh, we'll try this part, and they may be like, oh, can you sing it like this, in this register, and then maybe they'll change the key on you and be like, just to see if you'll work with them and how good your ear is. I noticed that when I went to a couple of auditions, and they said to me, oh, okay, good, now will you try this part? We're actually really trying to find out if you can, sing. Because like one time I auditioned for Evita, and because I was young, I just went in there and did, Evita's songs. But they were looking at me for the part of Perron's mistress, who had like that song, Another Suitcase in Another Hall. And they were like, oh, can you sing this one? And so they changed it, and they just wanted to see if I was, if they could work with me. So you have to be prepared for that. Prepared for, prepare your song, and then also be prepared to, maybe change the key or sing a different song, and have them work with you a little bit on that. But if it's the kind of thing where they allow you to bring your own tracks in, that's even better, because then it's in a key that you really like, and, they're maybe not going to play it at their own tempo. It's going to be a tempo that you're used to. But my experience was that they didn't really let you bring tracks in. They just wanted you to bring sheet music. I always like tell my singers to like build a songbook, like have like a few to pick from, and that way if, you go in there with, 3 or 4 different songs, if they say, oh, you got anything else you'd like to hear you sing more, you got it with you in your book, in your binder, your iPad, or whatever it is, and you can ready to go, and you can do it. And like I said, it really is always best to memorize stuff. That way, it's nice to have your lyric book with you, or your iPad with you, just in case, you want to reference it, and just kind of like refresh yourself, And if you have like a collection of songs that, you really like and you're really comfortable with, then you're never kind of at a loss. It's so funny. One time I got pulled over by this cop in New York City, and we had all kinds of, drums and gear and stuff like that. We're on our way to a show, and the cop was like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we're on our way to a gig. We're late. I'm sorry. Was I speeding? And he was like, yeah, well, you went through that yellow light, kind of thing. And he was like, oh, you're a singer? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, sing something for me. And he's like, when you're on the spot like that, and you just like, you want to be prepared for like, people always say to me, oh, you're a singer, sing something. That's how people are. But if it's somebody that you really, are like auditioning for, or, somebody that, from somewhere that, might have a band, or just somebody that you want to do your best, have a couple of those songs that's like ready, just kind of in your back pocket, kind of just break out, something that sounds good without any accompaniment at all. So this was cool, guys. Hey, I'm really glad you guys tuned in.
Jen, we had one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Reese had asked how you train your voice for belting.
Good question. So remember what I said about the breathing? I mean, it's like your diaphragm muscle is like a generator. It's a tone generator. And when you support with the breath, you can really belt it out, even up into the high notes. Like Christina Aguilera, she like will belt up to this high D, like. And when I do my vocal warm-ups, like I'll just like in my head with the humming get all the way up to that high D, like. And then you can start putting a little more power behind it, a little more power behind it. And then you really want to go, "Beep, beep, 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 shoo, shoo." You know, you can really belt it out, even a really high note. And but that's all coming from way, way down in my diaphragm, and my vocal cords are completely relaxed because they're vibrating at a high frequency, you know, to get that high note out and the power. And that way, that's where you really want the power to come from right down here in your diaphragm muscle, you know. But you just can go quietly, like in your head voice, get it, just start warming it up, and then a little bit louder and a little bit louder and a little bit louder, but always use the breath to be projecting, so you're not using this. Any more questions? You're welcome. All right, well, this has been a terrific time, and I hope you guys have many great performances with School of Rock and beyond, and I hope I get to see you all perform someday. Thank you.
Jen,
Thank you so much,
everybody,
guys.
thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You're
Thanks a lot.
welcome. Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.